you doing today, Sprigg? We are live, obviously, because
I am
I said
doing
yo.
good.
Yeah, good
Yeah,
to hear.
also, we're alive because I'm Sprigg.
True. Anybody watching on YouTube should definitely go check out Kobold Sprigg. Their link is in the description. Wait, it's not in there yet. This needs to be fixed. I'll be in there in like 3 seconds.
And if you don't already follow Jade on YouTube and you're here on Twitch, the command should be in my title so you can get the link. And Tuesday did a good bean and gave the link. Thank you, Tuesday.
Appreciate. Alright, set there. Good, yep, link's in there. So, we are going to talk about tabletop RPG design and I believe go over some homebrew, which I already have pulled up here.
Actually, I linked you to. I have a fully new RPG that I've been working on.
Ooh, oh nice.
Yeah. I took some heavy inspiration from Spirit Island towards the initiative system.
Oh, that sounds exciting. I do want to say...
I've been very excited.
I did want us to touch briefly on XCOM, though. You're still playing it on your channel until you finish out the mission.
Yes.
But I also wanted to talk about your thoughts on Chimera Squad, because we kind of accidentally streamed forever last time. We kind of, you know, whoopsie doodle, it's been 6 hours. This happens. We both do this.
Yeah, by the end of my stream, we were like just over like 7 hours, 15 minutes, I think. Welcome, Raiders.
Hello. So I wanted to get your closing thoughts on Chimera Squad.
I thought it was a very bigly fun, XCOM experience. I enjoyed it a lot more than I enjoyed Enemy Within, and that I am more than I am enjoying it right now, even as I'm playing it right now. I've heard some people's opinions that, like, Chimera Squad was the least XCOM, like it was the not goodest, the worst, not the worst one.
And I couldn't
Was what
disagree
I've
more.
heard a lot.
But we've discussed several times before the idea of golden calves, the idea of a game that has so many things baked into it that it feels like you can't remove it without changing the whole game, and still calling it the game, right? And in general, and it's a bad thing. It's you know, if you shouldn't feel locked into bad design simply because it's simply because it's been done differently in previous versions. I don't know. From the player's perspective, the player wants to play a game that they are comfortable with and recognize, and as developers, we should be making the best possible game and learning and building from our past experiences, not trying to simply recreate them.
As hot take, as someone who plays video games as a hobby and on the regular, I like video games that are fun.
Whoa! That is a hot take, isn't it?
It is lately, and it's weird that it is.
Yeah. And it was, in fact, a Firaxis dev, someone who made one of the XCOM games, in fact, talking about XCOM 2, and they said that given the opportunity, the players will optimize the fun out of a game. And it's true, you know? All you have to do is look at Monster Hunter tier lists, or literally anything involving an MMO, and you'll have people be saying, well, this is what it says on Reddit is the best thing to do, therefore this is what must be the best thing to do. And, well... okay. And that can create a toxic environment.
And Riddle is bringing up in my chat right now that, like, in XCOM, the Chimera Squad is a very different angle because, like, they're police instead of soldiers, and soldiers don't have a reasonable expectation to come home alive. But it's a video game,
Mm-hmm.
and it's for fun, not for reality.
Well,
So,
yeah.
like, I don't think that it had to be police for Chimera Squad. I think it could have worked just fine with, like, the same... You could have remade XCOM Enemy Within and just used the Chimera Squad mechanics, and it still would have been a fantastically fun game.
Agreed, and I'm hoping the next XCOM does use some of what they learned from Chimera Squad. Honestly, I want them to take the sequel bait they set for Chimera Squad and just make another Chimera Squad personally, but yeah. A lot of people didn't like the encounter setup, which is one of the things that I think that Chimera Squad does best. It gets rid of the whole everyone goes on Overwatch and you take 2 steps forward way of gimmicking XCOM.
Hard agree.
And by removing that, you create a situation where the player can make choices on their own. Like, you reach a situation where the player is actually engaged in the world and, looking at each combat situation instead of thinking about how they can avoid or circumvent each combat situation.
It's... My stream of XCOM Enemy Within that I've been doing recently is, like, a pretty very visible example of the problem of, like, the kind of almost need to, sorry, I was getting my music going. To, like, bounding Overwatch. Like, scoot Overwatch, scoot Overwatch, scoot Overwatch. Because, like, I've had multiple times that I had a person, like, scooted forward a tiny bit further than the rest of the squad, and I went, oh, these enemies appeared, and these enemies appeared, and these enemies appeared, and oh, that was the last person on your team to go, so we all get a turn now.
Yeah, and...
Dead squad member.
Yeah, and... that feels like you're being punished for engaging with the game.
Or even, like, there was the one where I did the smart thing and I was doing the slow and steady approach because I didn't have a timer. And I was stacking everyone up on a door, and then a hover disc just activated itself and flew through the door and insta-killed a squad member. Just like, hey guys, how's it going? Yours!
And I don't think in our playthrough of Chimera Squad, which was on normal difficulty for the record, we had one game over. We had multiple characters get downed until we got to the late game where we just sort of, got good, I guess. But I still felt like we had an appropriate challenge in most missions.
Yeah, like, I never felt cheated, but I did feel appropriately challenged. There was, like, the one fight in the first faction that we took down, the Sacred Coil.
Yeah.
The, like, jumbo room with a bazillion Ronin, that one felt kind of, like, a little bit unfair.
Yeah.
But I think that was in part because of my squad.
I'm inclined
Because
to
at the
agree.
time I was running a very low aggro squad. So I just didn't have a way to kill them fast enough.
Yeah, and that was a mission that was asking many questions of, hey, here's a whole bunch of different types of encounters. Here's one with all melee enemies. Here's a regular encounter. And then here's an encounter with 2 bosses in it. Anyways, shall we go forward into the game dev stuff? Yes?
Yeah.
The reason we're here today, doing stuff. We're doing cool stuff. I think we're supposed to be doing stuff. Are we doing stuff? I don't know. I think we're doing stuff. But, there we go.
So this is mostly just like my brainstorming document, and I haven't gotten to work on it as much as I would have liked to. While we've been doing like game dev stuff, and I'm kind of bazillion other things going on.
Yeah.
But I've had some stuff started that I've been excited to like do stuff on and share, but I didn't want to like show it off before I had something tangible.
So right out
I
of the
still
gate.
don't really have very much tangible.
So right out of the gate, the first question I have for you is this: can you give me the elevator pitch?
Okay, I don't know where to start, honestly.
What makes this game something that somebody would pick up instead of another game that they might already know or be comfortable with? What do you do? What do you do this special?
Have you ever played a tabletop RPG and gotten really bored because you had to wait 20 minutes for your turn again?
Yes.
Don't. Just don't wait for your turn, just take your turn. So, I'm familiar with what an elevator pitch is, Riddle, but thank you. So, my basic idea is rather than you have your movement, your action, your bonus action, your reaction, that style of thing, or like Pathfinder, you have 3 actions kind of thing. You have action points. This is if you've played Divinity Original Sin 2 or anything like that. It's very similar to that. You have a max amount of action points that you can use per round.
Okay.
And then you gain a set amount that is less than your maximum each round.
Okay.
So you can hold up to 12, and you gain 8 each round.
Gotcha. And that's static, that's not tied to any class or stat?
It is modified if you have wounds, which is a thing that I'll get into a little more later. So rather than initiative, basically, the DM just runs all of the creatures for the encounter. And what they do is I've split them up into monsters and minions.
Okay.
Rule of thumb, minions die in 1 critical hit or 1 or 2 regular hits. Or successes, even. So you can, say, charisma, just talk a minion down into running away. And if you critically succeed, they just instantly flee the fight.
Nice. Okay. So it's a little inspiration from
monsters.
4th edition there, it sounds.
Ooh. Monsters, behave similarly to players, so they get action points the same as you do. While minions have a very simplified turn. They have a set amount of movement, they have a set number of actions. They can move, they can do 1 action, and then their turn's over.
Okay, that makes sense.
And players, as long as they're performing an action that has a higher speed than the action that the minion is taking, can just interrupt that minion's action at any point. They can just say, "Hey, DM, excuse me." No. Bad guy wants to hit me with a hammer, but no. I would like to use 10 feet of movement and just get out of his range.
And you can do that during their turn?
Yep.
Anytime you have action points? Okay.
Yep. As long as you have movement, as long as you have action points, you can just interrupt anything that has a speed that is lower than the speed of the action you're taking.
Okay.
So,
okay.
for example, if you have a character who's running like super heavy armor and a great big sword kind of thing, they might have a fairly low speed. So they might not be able to interrupt like the minion that's a rogue with dagger, like just a dagger that's running around and doing their little tricksy stuff. But they can still interrupt most other minions.
Gotcha.
It'll hit them more with monsters, because monsters can interrupt players the same way that players interrupt minions.
Ooh, okay.
And one other thing is that minions' actions get locked in. So, like, if you say, this minion is No, we're not talking about 5e. This is an original This is an original tabletop RPG.
You're used to saying that.
So, if we'll say like the standard example of bandits, right?
Mm-hmm.
A bandit is rushing at you who is playing, say, a wizard, and they're trying to run up on you and hit you with a club. Well, your spells are slow, because, you have to do your incantations and everything to make a spell go off. But you can move at high speed. So when he runs up to swing his club at you, you can just use a few feet of your movement to backpedal out of his reach. So
Okay.
even though he has a throwing axe on his belt, because he said he's going to charge up and swing with his club, he doesn't get to pull that axe anymore. You interrupted that action and dodged him swinging the club.
Okay. This also explains the meaningful armor thing that I see on the first page here. Because a system like this, a high dex character is all they have to do is save enough movement points to move far enough away from an enemy incoming strike, and they're invincible. Whereas a heavy character who can't do that, who has a slow speed, needs to be much more protection. A lot of damage thresholds can be very difficult to work with because it means that a hit that could possibly deal damage to a tank may be far outside of the math for a rogue or for a wizard, and they might get splattered. So in order to be able to effectively threaten one character, another character has to be in a bad position. That is one balancing thing that I think that D&D does very well, but it doesn't leave the flexibility for fast characters to actually feel fast. Shadowrun does a different job with it, and a pretty good one, but not in the reactive way that you're saying.
So basically, there's your AC or armor class. Instead of having just armor class, you have two different stats: is evasion or deflection. And evasion will only won't work against everything, and deflection won't work against everything. So you have to kind of find whatever balance it is that you want to aim for your build.
Yeah.
Between managing your evasion and your deflection.
Okay. So right out of the gate, first thing I want to cover is what do dice do?
So you still have your standard like D20 roll for success or failure kind of thing. And I did take the idea from Pathfinder as well of anything that is 10 or more above a success is a critical success, or 10 or more below failure is critical failure. So the idea is kind of like, because you can react to so many different things, you're not just gonna tune out for 10 minutes and wait for your turn to come back. People will be, and I saw it a little bit in the short playtest that I ran with some of my D&D players. People are like talking regularly through the combat as they strategize and respond to things happening.
That's a great feeling.
So like that was really cool to me. It felt great that it worked like that. My balancing was not there yet. I actually have some notes from my first playtest of like how the sparks worked. So that is another thing that's a little bit weird. Is rather than making, your race class background kind of standards, what I'm aiming for is you will have an ancestry, which is your standard like race/species, whatever. that you call it in different games. You have your origin, which is where in the world you are from. Your calling, which is your D&D background. What did you do before you became an adventurer? Your
Right.
spark. What is it that you use to fuel your power, like your special abilities? So one of the examples that I have looked to a lot for this is, you've seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, right?
I have not, actually.
So to give us a fairly short explanation of it, of the thing that I'm pulling from, there is a character in the series who does all of their magical bending powers using rage. So it's their hatred and their rage that they use to fuel all of their abilities.
Okay.
And then later on in the series, they have this turning point and they let go of all of that rage, and then they completely lose all of their powers, so they have to go on a journey to learn a better way. So by making that spark a separate thing, I can insert a vehicle for players to have a similar journey in role-playing. Where, like, I don't want to use my fury anymore. I don't want to use my whatever thing. And then there's the flare, which is like your class, quote unquote. It's the style that your abilities take. But it's going to... My goal that I'm aiming for is like a pseudo-classless system, so you can build up and have... Like, you can create your own spells, you can flexibly create your own, like, non-magical special move kind of things.
Yeah.
Similar to, again, like calling back 4th edition, marshals get to have fun too and have cool powers that they can use too.
So then, okay, let's... Okay, so... Run me through... Somebody, let's say looking for a bathroom.
Looking
Player
for
says-
a bathroom?
Yep, say a player says, hey, I'm trying to find a secret door here. GM says...
I feel very on the spot now, and I'm not sure.
Because you've talked
so
entirely...
I don't have...
Because you've talked mostly about, combat so far.
Oh. I have been trying to set it up towards, because like combat is the easiest example to pull usually. But I'm trying from the ground to design like your flares and everything like that to not just be your combat skills, but to be your skills that are applicable to any scene, and your scenes are basically varied encounters, whether they be combat or non-combat or whatever.
Okay. So let me take a look at a couple of the flares. We have a couple of them that are fleshed out here.
I have a little bit of like ideas put down. Is mostly what I have here is just like
Concepts.
is unfortunately mostly just concept, yeah.
So, in Artist, can see fine details clearly, can gain a photographic memory, can make disguises, paintings or sculptures, and spot details within sight for 4 action points and 2 spark points. And so these are a bit where your verbs are coming from, in effect. And for one that's more offensive, Fire Weaver, gain the ability to perform fire weaving and just whatever that gets defined as.
Mhm.
Or... I'm not seeing any... Okay. So that's for magics. We're not... And I'm not seeing... Oh, pugilist is one. Okay, good. We are seeing a couple martial here.
And another page down, we get to like the martial skills style things.
Knife fighter. Your attacks can ignore the damage threshold at the cost of a spark point. Love it. Conceal objects. And how many of these flares are you allowed to have on a character?
I have been bouncing around some ideas for that. Roughly what I was thinking is that you can take more flares, but they had a reduction in your spark, I believe, the more of them that you had.
Okay.
I had it written down somewhere here, but it's been a little while since I've gotten to come back to this.
And the spark, so the flare is sort of more of a background, in a sense.
In a sense, yeah.
So, still gives, it's a background that gives you verbs. It's a background that gives you core things that you are allowed to do. How many were you planning on allowing the player to have roughly? Like, not like it was, it's baseline.
I believe it was going to be baseline. You have 3 before you start taking penalties.
Okay. And then how many?
You basically as you level up, you can take more points into them to grab certain skills out of them.
And sparks look like they're more. It's your power source.
Yes.
Now, what role do you want me to play in this conversation? Do you want me to ask the hard questions that we need to think about, or do you want me to just smile and nod, or do you want me just to try to build off of ideas?
I would love to hear like the hard questions too, because I'm used to writing homebrew for systems that already exist. Writing something entirely new is just like I'm learning as I go.
Okay. Alright, so the sparks make sense, like, right out of the gate. I like the idea of sparks because it means that different power sources have different ways of gaining whatever resource it is. That's something that I know that you are a big fan of in other systems as well, and, well, frankly, I think it is good, and it creates a very interesting asymmetric gameplay. Which means that you have to have abilities that are action point dependent, right? If you have a ability that has, it has to have a resource meter and an action point meter. So it means that each player is constantly juggling 2 resources minimum at every single moment, correct? Okay.
Yes. And my thinking for that is that, like an easier way to do that, I'm thinking, is basically on your character sheet to have a spot where you have your number of bubbles for your actions, your action points, and then you can just put tokens on top of them and slide them off as you use them to track easier.
Okay. So, right out of the gate with Fury, this looks like the only ways you can gain Fury with what you have in here is in combat. So my question right out of the gate is, what does it look like for a Fury character who wants to use an ability outside of combat?
They also generate Fury by failing to generate a success on anything.
Okay.
So, like, a Fury character who's trying to generate Fury in a non-combat encounter, their first round or 2, they're not gonna get a lot done. But then as the more that they try things and fail, the more that they'll be able to pull from their resource later.
Which means you're expecting the player to be failing. I don't love that. Also because I am a very strong proponent of fail forward. I believe that if the player fails, that shouldn't mean that just nothing happens, right? If the player fails, it should still progress the plot in some way. But if you have the barbarian equivalency, the fury-based character. I'm just using barbarian in D&D logic as a baseline, comparison point. If you have a barbarian fail, but it still pushes the plot forward, then it's not the worst thing in the world. But it does give them some fury. But then, it also means that they're not going to have a harder time. They're going to have a harder time meaningfully succeeding, unless it's explicitly a long, drawn-out social encounter. Correct?
Which I kind of felt was like, to me at least, for what I had of it, it felt like it fit in with the word, ludonarratively. Someone who is very angry in a social situation, for example, is going to have a lot of flubs, and it might only be after like half an hour or so that you start to really get to know the person behind that.
Yeah.
It may not be a smart idea. I'm not saying it is, but
Well, my concern here is
it felt
apparent,
like it
right?
fit.
There's a lot of standalone checks to be made in any tabletop system, right? If you're not in combat and you are looking for the bathroom, you don't want to fail that check just because you're a character who's going to fail checks early in the fight, early in the situation, because there might not be another roll, right? There's a lot of, I roll for perception. Oh, okay, moving on. I roll for persuasion. No? Okay. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have a full skill encounter trying to persuade an individual character, and it could potentially make the Fury-based character feel like they can't participate in simple checks. Now, you obviously have ways of going around this by making it things that happen to abilities and whatnot that might be able to make things work better. Or, what if Fury also had abilities that flagged off of a failure, specifically reactions to failure? That could be interesting. A way of mitigating that. So I'm just going stream of consciousness. I'm not like actually trying to piece together anything in particular. I'm just kind of saying words. Focus. Generate focus each time you attempt. So generate focus each time that you do anything. Sounds a lot like Fury. Because you're always trying to generate a success, right? That just means anything that you do, right?
And there was, I had originally had focus just as you statically gain and like X amount every round. But it just like did not feel fun.
Okay.
So like, this was a second draft that I took at it, but I'm still not 100% on it.
I'm not seeing a meaningful difference between focus and fury. Both, when I read this, both of them say, generate focus each time that you attempt an action, and that you can
Focus
it will
gets
build.
whether you succeed or you fail. So it would have to be like a bigger bump. For Fury, it would have to be gaining multiple per one.
Okay. A lot of overlap, though. There would have to be a lot of supporting abilities to make sure that they feel distinct, because otherwise they could feel samey. Tenacity. Generate anytime you fail to generate a success. Which sounds a lot, again, like Fury. Just except instead of focus. Okay. Fail to hit an attack, or when you are targeted by your foes, as opposed to being hit by your foes, or failing to generate a success, which is the same. I like the idea of having multiple ways of gaining a resource, but I think that these are two right at this moment.
Kind of two the same.
Kind of samey, right?
Calm is like fully different.
Start with a large
it's
pool.
the wizard spell slots pool.
Yeah. Start with a large pool of calm that can be consumed, but only replenish with a good break and maybe a meal. Yeah, that one makes sense. That one feels unique and distinct. Joy. Generate upon successes, but lose anytime you fail. Depressing and dark. Misery. Anytime that you or an ally fails. A lot of these focus on failure.
Originally, I had them, like Joy and Misery, originally I had them a little bit different, where Joy was anytime you succeed, or your allies succeed, or your enemies fail, then you gained it, but it was just too much to keep track of. It was clumsy, and like you had to be constantly managing it all the way through the round. Too much to even get to take time to spend on your own stuff.
So,
like, my Sparks, I think I agree with you that, like, they need to be reworked.
yeah. And since that's so core to everything that's going on, I feel like that has to be reworked first, you know? Before you really start looking into perks, flaws, equipments, any of that fun jazz stuff. Let's talk about this core idea. I think that we need a dice system to begin with. We don't necessarily need it, but we have right here D20 tests.
Yep, I'm planning on using a D20 system.
Okay. I see. So I'm just skimming through the jazz jams here. Okay, so let's talk resource. Resource is important. It's what defines your character more than anything else. If you want to make a classless system, then your resource gaining is one of the primary things that's going to determine what you do.
Basically.
Yeah. So there's at a baseline there's two different ways of setting resource. Bottom up and top down, right?
As in starting from 0 and gaining, or starting from the top and depleting?
Right, exactly. Anything that has a top down is going to... Well, let me just talk about what some of the traps that the players can find. Right out of the gate, anything that has a top-down system is going to encourage the players to engage in the 5-minute adventuring day, which I'm sure you're familiar with, right? Where you go out and you do one thing and then you take a long rest, repeat. Because, as we were talking about before stream, the players will optimize the fun out of anything they do. This was a common thing in first and second edition D&D, and, well, frankly, it was a common thing in 3.5 as well. And you would need a way of forcing that not to be a first order strategy. You have to. It's just like the Overwatch bouncing in XCOM we were talking about. Why wouldn't you Overwatch bounce? Because the way the game sets things out, it's just the best option. H. Bomber Guy coined the term play conditioning, where a game conditions the player in the best way to play it, which may not be the best way to actually play the game, but it's the way that the game teaches you is best. And in XCOM, that is Overwatch bouncing. The game teaches you that Overwatch bouncing is the optimal way to play. It's wrong, but that is, at some innate level, taught to you as optimal. Likewise, for something like Dark Souls. Dark Souls, the first thing they give you is a shield, and they teach you how to use it. And the first couple levels of the game condition you to hide behind your shield at all times. it wasn't until Bloodborne where they really changed how they conditioned the player to act by saying, hey, you don't have a shield, you're going to need to dodge and maneuver and reposition.
Yeah.
And then when you finally get a shield, you've already learned that you don't need to do that, right?
Yeah, in Dark Souls 1, it was, so what they really had to do was, even if they kept the shields, they just had to not give half of the cast 100% block shields to start.
Now, the pivot in here for the tabletop discussion that we're having, though, is two flipped issues, right?
Yep.
Either you have the mana burn, where you have a whole bunch of casters who walk out onto the battlefield, rain hellfire on the enemy, and then go take a quick nap. And then repeat that all day long, because why wouldn't they? Why would the player not simply blow their highest tier spells and then fall asleep for 4 hours and then go on and do the next battle? And on the flip side, you have potentially a worse situation. One in which players intentionally stall out and make a battle take longer so that they can safely get their
resources.
So they can generate enough resources to comfortably take the battle without being in danger. And these are certainly things that we can work with. I'm not saying there's no way around this. There obviously is many ways around this, but I wanted to point out both of those issues, because on one hand you have someone completely breaking the entire economy, not action economy per se, but scaling of the game, and on the other you have someone intentionally not having fun so that they can actually use the abilities that they want later. The obvious answer is to have both these in the same party, but let's assume that players suck. I mean, even if it's not true, it's a good thing to assume going into it, right?
So one of the things, for the sake of the adventuring day, that I was hoping anyways, was what I was setting out to do, is I broke down resting into 3 parts. Instead of short long, there's a breather, a rest, and a break.
Okay.
So a breather is 10 minutes. It's your 10 minutes to do first aid, regather ammunition, wrap up after a battle. And calm replenishes half of it after your first breather, but no more. After that, you need to take a rest, which is it's like an 8-hour break. It's your long rest of D&D.
Okay.
But that only recovers 1 wound, which is a separate thing that I'm gonna explain in a second.
Oh.
And the break is when you take a proper rest. A break is a full week spent in civilization or a well-constructed camp. During a break, you can do downtime crafting, you can do social encounters, it's just you're not out adventuring and fighting. You're not you're not pushing yourself, basically. It's to encourage your groups to actually set down roots with NPCs in an established location. Wounds is, maybe I'm a little bit overcomplicating here, but your health, rather than having a set, you have 20 HP, you have 4 wounds that each have 5 HP.
Okay.
And if you ever get a crit, if you get crit and you take damage to one of your wounds that's remaining, that wound is then knocked off.
Okay.
And once you're missing half or more of your wounds, you get penalties. And once you're in your last wound, you get buffs.
Interesting. Is that true for everybody, or is that only true for certain
Yes,
sparks?
that is true for everyone. I have it down here. Wound penalties. When you lose your available wounds, it chips away at their ability to defend themselves. A creature with half its wounds remaining has speed reduced by that's from before I reworked initiative. So it reduces your speed and initiative, and it reduces your action point recovery from 8 to 6. But then when you're on your last remaining wound, you are desperate, you're in fight or flight, you're like struggling to survive. You get increased action per point recovery to 12, which increases your limit as well, but it reduces your deflection and evasion based on the number of actions that you take. So it should help you to, like, get insta-kill. Keep you from getting insta-killed.
Sort of like a heart system from a Zelda game.
Oh. It's... Imagine, though, if, like, in Legend of Zelda you've got your heart system, right? And each heart has, like, the 4 quarters of each key. Once that gets hit with a crit, the red turns into gray, so that gray can get refilled, but it never turns red again until you take rests.
Right.
And it's, you only lose a wound when you take crit damage to one of your wounds that you have remaining. Or you get knocked to 0.
Okay. I'm just skimming through. Okay. That sounds exciting. Alright. What I'd like to do for a few moments is talk about another game. We were talking about Chimera Squad before, a game that was not considered as good as its predecessors despite having some new ideas. I want to talk about another game like that. I want to talk about Diablo 3.
Okay,
Have you played it?
I have. It's been a little while, but I did play it.
So every class in Diablo 3 has a different power source. And it's something that I kept on thinking about while I was reading through these sparks in here. Specifically because of the way that those that each of them balance is fairly unique. Arcane power for the wizards is a top-down, and you just burn through it as you're casting spells. But other spells will also recover it, allowing you to create a back and forth, a little bit of back and forth. And it's a way of making a top-down system where you have a relatively low amount of total resource, but by pinging back and forth, by using some abilities depleting it and other abilities restoring it, you have that sort of rubber band, which can be really engaging to some players. This is also how Black Mage is in Final Fantasy XIV, where...
Yeah, I'm familiar with that one too. The
It's
fire spells do more damage, but deplete energy and ice are less cost, but they refill energy.
Right. And that's kind of what I'm thinking one of these might work well as, but that requires the sparks to be a bit more defined in action, you know? That would require a lot more... It might seem like that is something that has to be done later on in development, because it can't be done yet, right? You don't have the other tools necessary to do that. But if you want to create that house of cards, you need to set the foundation first and say, okay, well, maybe calm. Whatever which one, it doesn't matter. One of these is going to have a low resource cap and then do this bounce back and forth between the two. Likewise, Essence, which is the Necromancer in Diablo 3, starts full, does not recover ever, unless you are using other abilities. So whereas the Arcane Power, you have a natural regen and certain abilities that can recover. The essence never recovers outside of specific abilities that are plot focused. Well, I'm not plot focused in Diablo, but in the context of this, it would be like, okay, misery can only recover through these failure points, and possibly nothing else. There's Fury, which out of combat is at 0, which is and is bottom up. This is mitigated by having certain abilities that just straight up generate it, So you can have some in a non-combat situation in that case, but also their baseline abilities are better than a lot of classes. The do nothing but punch enemy is a viable strategy for the class. I forget how hatred works. It's weird and complicated.
I think hatred was like whenever it kills enemies.
Like, I think it also regens?
Well, it's because the Demon Hunter had a split resource. They had 2 resources.
They had hatred and discipline. I'm looking at it now. So hatred regen naturally. Yeah, okay, so hatred regen naturally. Okay. Discipline also regens naturally. Interesting. But by having 2 different pools, they have different abilities using different things. Then of course you have mana, which is the classic,
Yeah.
And then the monks had spirit, which did the same thing, something very similar to the arcane power, where it's just a martial version of arcane power, where some actions decrease it and other actions increase it. So what did we learn from this? We learned that they, when they were creating separate resources, they kept several of them with giving the player agency to balance how much of it went in different directions.
Yeah.
So what if we take a look at Fury and compare it to what we did what we saw in XCOM Chimera Squad with Axiom? But what if Fury is a scale with some things raising it, some things lowering it, but instead of having to build up Fury to be useful, you can do anything at any Fury. Higher Fury, you deal more damage, though. That way the player always feels like they can do things, but they can't do the stronger things until it comes up, but it doesn't actually limit them in that then, though. They can just do things without Fury. It just isn't going to be as effective until they get it. Is there anything there? Is that a thought, or is that not a thought?
I think I'm seeing kind of where you're coming from on that one, and I like the idea of it. I'm not sure if it's like just a damage thing to make it work.
Yeah, that's fair. The other option is accuracy,
I mean,
but
it wasn't great to begin with, so I'm not, I'm not saying it's bad. I think what I kind of like the idea of is like it generates by these means that I already had, but you can also generate it by spending action points. Maybe. So you can kind of psych yourself up and then have enough to start doing your stuff.
That makes sense. I do like the use and generate. But I don't know which one it would apply. The black mage thing, the black mage effect. I don't know which one that would best apply to.
I'm not nailed it, like, I'm not fully dedicated to these as they exist right now. This was just where I was when I started, because this is like still the stage when we were doing the game dev, where we were still picking the classes that we were gonna put in the game.
Yeah, of course.
Probably a little bit earlier than that even.
Okay. I had thought you said you had some playtest, so I was expecting to be a bit further.
I did do a playtest just of the initiative system primarily.
Ah, okay.
Because when I was talking about it with my friends on my D&D server, they were really concerned that it was going to be really confusing and clumsy and awkward to play. So I wanted to get them to join me to do a test so that I could make sure, like, the action points thing isn't super confusing and awkward to deal with. The resources like the sparks and the classes and all that, I just used 5e character sheets, but we used the actions, like the action and initiative system that I had written out.
I think that the sparks... the game lives or dies on the sparks. That's my instinct right now. My instinct is that if the sparks are engaging for the players, then you have a good game, and if the sparks are frustrating or feel worse than other games on the market, then they're going to play the other games on the market, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like hammering down sparks is the single most important thing after dice. Though with dice, it looks like you're going with something fairly generic, so that's fine.
So I think for sparks, what I'm gonna have to do is not just be a resource. I think it's like where I have to go with it is I have to give them abilities and stuff too. And then once they have those abilities and stuff, then they will be more... It'll be like a subclass to your class, which is your combination of flares. Or the class to your subclass that you build out of your flares.
Yeah. I think that it really has to be that way because the spark shouldn't necessarily lock you into a playstyle. Like, you should be able to use a spark to be able to make, you know, either a ranged user or a caster or a melee fighter. But because everything that character does is defined by the sparks, I think that I agree that having actions be tied to sparks is essential. I think it just has to be. Though I am thinking now... I have a terrible idea. Have you ever played Big Eye Small Mouth?
I have seen the book on a shelf, but I've never actually played.
So, let me see if I can't find... So, Big Eye Small Mouth is a very generic RPG. To a fault. Absolutely to a fault. And it is painfully open-ended. But the way that it allows you to effectively make any anime character from any anime or novel or movie is worth looking at. What they do is they have a bazillion skills.
Yeah, and they have, like, archetype things that I remember seeing through.
Yep. And these, the way the skills are laid out, they can be somewhat generic, but in being generic, that lets the player craft them to be what they want. Let me pull up. I'm trying to find... There we go. There we go. Let me just click something at random. Okay, I have picked a couple things at random. Martial arts costs 2 points. You know what? Wait a minute, where's the actual rules for it? Wait, is there actually rules for this? Where are the actual rules for this? Huh, weird. So, light armor. If you take light armor, 1 point of it gives you 2 points of damage reduction, or 1 point of damage reduction if it's a hidden armor. And then it just has scaling things for levels 1 through level 6. And because any player can take this, it can be a different value for different things. Kensei, on the other ability, which is sword fighting, each level of Kensei gives 1 Kensei ability, and it lists a dozen different abilities. Anything from escape artist to 2-weapon fighting to a blind fighting. And you can craft what your character does by taking 1 point, and then the character is definition is how many points does that character have. Now, the downside to this is that you can have a character who is a combat master, and then have a second character who is literally a schoolgirl who has very high rolls for running with toast in her mouth, and reflexes and math. You know, like maybe they're really good at acrobatics, but not very good at math. And you can have 2 characters who are both like 30-point characters, one of which can fight God, the other of which has no combat ability whatsoever. But it's interesting to look at just to see how things are scaled comparatively. You can have a flunky that is just, like someone who follows you around and either is a yes man, or maybe they're a contract worker who's under your supervision, or maybe they are a kid who likes you at school, who follows you around and carries your work. And level 1 is 1, level 2 is 2, level 3 is 3 to 4, level 4 is 5 to 7, level 5 is 8 to 12, and level 6 is 13 to 20. Cool! That means at some point, someone on this team decided that level 6 flunkies, to have 13 to 20 flunkies who follow you around, is somehow mathematically equivalent to 15 points of damage reduction in light armor. Like, how do you... It doesn't make sense at a certain level, but at the same time, one of the skills is called owns a big mecha. So, like... the flexibility of the system is simultaneously a benefit and a fault, and that's kind of what I'm getting at, is if you want to have a truly classless system, and you'd want to have a bunch of abilities that anybody can take, and how do you separate combat abilities from non-combat abilities? What if somebody makes their character and doesn't take any combat abilities? Are they allowed to be in the same game? Because they're playing a completely different game. And I genuinely have had a game of Big Eye Small Mouth where 3 characters in the party could output in combat between 30 to 40 damage per round, just mathematically off their character sheet. And another one that could output a maximum of 12 and an average of 8.
Yeah.
Guess which player at the table was not having fun?
The one that only did up to 12 damage?
Mm-hmm. Because they just couldn't participate in the same fight. And then in the same game, actually, one player had damage resist 20. Another player had 30 HP. Any enemy that I put in front of the party that could actually cause any damage, any meaningful damage, to that one player, another character was completely immune to. Now, I like the way that you're sidestepping in this by having the faster characters able to, just straight up genuinely dodge. But that is explicitly cutting into their action economy because that's using their action points to move as opposed to, fight.
They do. Everyone gets a set amount of movement that's free every round.
Okay, that's good to know. Nice.
Yeah. I deliberately made sure that you have free movement plus your action points that you can spend for more movement.
This is good.
I really especially after playing Pathfinder 2, that was a must.
Speaking of which, come back tomorrow for more of that.
Indeed.
I'm excited.
That's a game example where I don't deal any damage at all.
It is, but you're still able to participate in combat in meaningful ways.
Yep. Although that's never stopped me in anything I've played anyway.
Valid. So
one of the ones that comes back to mind for me all the time. I had a rogue that I was playing in a grimdark game that was being run by one of my friends. And the life cleric of the party was very upset that I was not attacking a mimic and dealing damage. What I did instead was completely remove the mimic from the fight.
that sounds reasonable to me.
I pulled the tarp from my bag and wrapped it under the bottom of the lid. So I caught its mouth open basically with the tarp.
Nice.
And then tied the tarp together behind atop the lid while I jumped on its back and held basically leaned back, keeping its lid open so that I couldn't bite it. So I became Mimic Rodeo champion.
That's amazing, and I love it.
Or there was Liv's one shot where you saw my shenanigans in action.
No, that was
I
amazing.
swing one attack, and that's it for the whole scene.
I talked to people, and it somehow worked really well. But on that note, what I think we need right here is funnels. We need player funnels. To force the players to make characters that are going to be fun. Because we've discussed it before, I'll keep on saying it, players will choose not to have fun if they think that the optimal path is something different. So, what I'm going to suggest right out of the gate here is to change things at a base level. Which I hate doing because the base level is, kind of where you want to be doing stuff. Well, the sparks need to be reworked, and we can work on that in a few moments. But I wanted to tell you my ideas for the flares, because the flares are the other most important thing here, right? The flares are what you define as what you do. I think we need two separate categories of flares. Combat-related ones and non-combat-related ones.
I do actually have them loosely divided into 3 groups right now.
And what are the 3 groups?
But I have the non-combat, the magic, and the combat.
Okay.
Because there's Lobber is the only one in that first part that's really combat at all. Before the Weavers.
So, what I would suggest is that a player is allowed to pick 2 combat flares and 2 non-combat flares. This stops the player from going all in on making a completely non-combat character in a system that is meant to, make a character that's able to do things in the world. It also prevents the players from doing the opposite and saying, but what if I had every combat option better, and then not making a well-rounded character that's, interesting on outside of the battlefield. So by separating out combat and non-combat, and saying you get 2 of each, pick, you still tickle that fun. You still tickle that idea in the back of the head that says, ooh, what combinations can I do? Ooh, a Life Weaver, but like a Life Weaver melee martial artist? Like the players are going to be able to get, take these ideas of how to combine 2 different things. It can be a rogue with throwing knives, and I'll take Air Weaver, and I'll be able to use my wind magic to help throw my knives. And like they can get this rush of coming up with a combination of themselves that will work, which we want to encourage. You want to get away from that optimal Reddit idea of, well, this is the best thing to do, and help encourage the player into, ooh, what options would be neat to do together, without overwhelming them with too many options. Right? If you say you can pick 4 sparks or 3, or if you can, or not sparks, if you can pick 4 flares or you can pick 3 flares, well, there's no direction there, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if we say 2...
I also would like to do... it's something that I did with, like, the stonemason, for example. I'd like to try to include, like, some crossover skills in the non-combat and the combat ones. Where, like, you can take a thing in a non-combat class to get a combat bonus, or in combat class to get a non-combat bonus, too.
That makes sense. Though I will say on that note, though, I would separate magic into the same categories.
Into the combat category?
I would separate them into combat or non-combat. Like, let's say, Light Weaver can be a selection for a non-combat flare, whereas Death Weaver is a combat flare. Maybe Fire Weaver is a combat flare, but Water Weaver has no offensive abilities, has no actual combat techniques. Therefore, that and you turn that into a flare for, purely for on the non-combat side. Then taking water is not just a combat choice. You know what I'm saying? And that, I think, would allow the player even more fun things. Like, ooh, what it could be, like this ideas of combining things. Having 1 or 2 things that affect combat in a non-combat flare is not bad, and vice versa, unless they are just better, right? Let's say that Trapper just gives you a static +1 to shooting things. Cool. Anybody who's shooting things is taking Trapper as their social skill and never looking back. They're not actually engaging in any choices, because that choice is good enough that it's been made for them. So I think that finding the balance on where those crossovers occur, and they don't always have to occur. Cooking is actually another one that could cross over in an interesting way. You could make food that would give the party buffs, combat buffs, but that would still be very much a non-combat class ability. Not class, flare. I should just get used in that brain think.
Actually, there is a manga that was an inspiration for some of my flares when I was writing.
Oh, which one?
Where, Only Sense Online.
Okay.
And in that one, there is a cooking skill. If you level up your cooking enough, that it starts to make the, like, hidden weak spot on some enemies begin to appear. Basically gives you, like, mega crits against certain enemies.
Okay. That's a cool idea. So, I think for the flares, that's the direction that I would highly recommend. And flares should definitely give... The combat flares should be the baseline of where you get your combat... Ooh, oh. I have an idea, Sprigg. What if all of the flares, combat flares, spend resource points.
Okay.
And then, for the attacks. And but all of these sparks have different ways of gaining them, and abilities that gain them. Calm could regain through this meditation, whereas Fury would have a couple of skills that you would have to use, sort of creating that fire and ice black mage thing. But then the player, you could play a Fury black mage but then you would still have to use the Fury abilities to recover, whereas the calm black mage would recover by meditation and sitting back and thinking and being calm. So they have access to the same offensive skills in their flares, but their utility skills are specific to the spark. How do you feel about that?
That's a really cool idea.
Mm-hmm. And that way, because building back your resources is a core part of the game, all the abilities and actions that restore resource being tied to the sparks, maybe at certain levels, maybe at certain whatever. If you have an equivalent of feats that you can take, that for them, you can for later ones, all stem from the spark. The calm swordsman is ready to go at the start of the battle with a full pool of MP and a sword drawn, ready to use all their cool sword skills that take MP. Whereas the misery swordsman needs to use an action that actually gives himself a debuff to build a base level of their skill points, which is going to be worse, except for the fact that they never run out, and if they're willing to stack another debuff, well, I mean, why not? They might as well, and give themselves more and more. Whereas the Fury one can start out there and have to use whatever rage strike starts them out building meter, whatever meter it is. So the same swordsman has 3 completely different play styles, even though it's the same class with the same actions. Is there something there?
Very cool idea. I absolutely agree. That's a very cool idea. I think I like that.
So let's... Do you want to... Okay, so what about sparks that we have here do we want to keep? And what do we want to try to rework?
I think the only sparks that I feel like I really... What? I don't know, my chat is telling me Kobold transparent logo. I don't know what to... Oh, my top. Yeah, something about the VTuber Plus when it captures, it's been making my logo transparent so you can see straight through me.
Oh, green screen issue? I get it.
I don't even have a chroma key on.
Wait, what?
Yeah, it's just the program that I broadcast from has a transparent background.
Huh.
And I guess it must, the way it does its transparent background must be that it chroma keys black? But, it doesn't chroma key my pupils or my eyelashes or anything.
That's so strange. Huh. Sorry, you were saying that?
I think the only sparks that I feel like are distinct enough on their own to warrant absolutely keeping is Fury and Calm. Yeah, I think honestly that's really it. It's Fury and Calm.
Okay. So let's just define what Fury is. Fury is bottom up and Calm is top down. I mean, that's easy as, right?
Oh.
Do we want... these to innately establish a melee or ranged situation? Probably not.
No.
No? Okay.
Definitely no.
Definitely no. Okay. So we want bottom up, top down, rubber band, and self debuff. That would be the equivalent of the misery one.
Mhm.
And what's the rubber band one?
We can just bring it back as misery.
Misery was going to be the self debuff. Let's go with joy. We'll call that one the rubber band. Unless you want. No?
Okay,
No? Okay, so
I'm
misery.
not fully following what you mean now. I'm putting it down, but I'm just not fully following where
Oh, I'm just slapping
anymore.
names. Okay, that's fine. I'm just slapping names on things. So I'm more worried about the mechanics than the theming. So you want misery to be the rubber band one? The misery is going to be the one that
No, I was just confused as well. To joy for the rubber band, and misery for the self debuff.
That's what I was thinking. I mean, this is your game. I mean, you have this full say on everything. I'm just kind of brainstorming off this.
Oh.
So let me just write out a couple of words, and I want to hear your response to them. I'm not saying that this is correct. I'm saying that this is a thought. Okay?
Mhm.
So Fury. Let's say that Fury has a limitless cap and gains. And what would its action be? The action would have to be just a basic melee or ranged attack. That's just whose job is to generate fury. But it would have to work both for a mage or for a melee specialist. So this is how the Fury class. Then, of course, Fury would have an ability that says when you get hit, gain X Fury, gain X resource. Then it would have one that said an option that said if you fail a check, then you gain X resource. But their baseline ability that says, "Hey, I'm going to use this ability because I need some resource at the moment." And how does that function? Or is that a more complicated one, so we should do that one later?
I feel like because it's gotta be something that's used no matter what kind of class you're doing, like what kind of playstyle, no matter what kind of attacks you're doing, maybe we set that aside for now and come back to it once we've got a better idea with another one.
Sounds like a good idea.
Like, Calm is a little more straightforward.
It is. So, Calm is a top-down, high-cap, difficult to restore. Right? And right out of the gate, resource does not degrade. Does not degrade naturally. Resting recovers up to half of your resource. And full rest recovers fully. And then we could have a couple of actions here that say, like spend a turn doing nothing. Gain X amount of resource. That way, if they want to sit out of a fight and just meditate for a moment and get a breather, they can get some of their resource back as an action.
instead of not doing anything, it's they can choose to not regain action points and instead regain calm.
I like it. They can choose to regain resource points instead of action points. I like it. Now let's go to Joy. The idea of Joy is that it's a low cap with an easy recovery, right? You can fill it up and empty it out, and fill it up and empty it out.
Yeah.
It's a little manic, but you know. So, is it bottom up or top down? Do they start at nothing and they have to use a couple things to get it up there? I think it might as well start at the top if it's going to be easy to recover, just a very low cap.
Yeah.
Okay. And then
Yeah,
they
so
need
I
a...
think, like, top-down makes sense. Originally what I had for Joy was, it was a bottom-up, but it never went away, like, it never reset at any point. So it just stayed with whatever you have.
Then what's a good action that would flip that rubber band up there? And if the cap is at, like, say 10 and the other cap's at like 50, that does mean that Joy is locked out of using any ability that takes more than 10 resource, which could be a good thing. That could be a good way of balancing this by saying, hey, Joy, if you, I don't know, don't move during your turn, you can recover a 5 resource in one moment. Or probably not moving, but what if you do move? Force make them move. But some action that recovers a bunch easily, but still by having a cap on it. And then the idea that I'm having is you can have a whole bunch of different actions here. You can have a whole bunch of different actions and feats and traits that might fill out more of exactly what you were going to set up. Like, you know, the ideas of, like, you know, if any character misses an attack or action, then Misery gains additional resource, you know? But by setting it in this way, I think it is neat. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have no idea if this is a good idea. All I know is that it's an idea.
So I think, like, Misery is gonna stay also it just permanently remains whatever it is, the same as Joy. But rather than being top-down and easy to restore and spend, it's a higher cap, but it's bottom-up and harder to restore.
I think just by calling it Misery, having something like, you know, choose one of your stats, lower it by 1, gain a bunch of resource, and then you can clear stats on a rest. Sounds really interesting in, like, a Blood Mage sort of way, you know? It's like, okay, my stat pool is now a resource.
What I'm liking is an idea of a table that, like, every time a scene starts, you roll on the table, and it's like, okay, this scene, I have less initiative speed, or I have less walking speed, or I have less action point recovery. And
the trade-off for having that is that, cool, I can gain theoretically, if I'm willing to roll on the debuff table, I can gain 10 resource instantaneously. Maybe even not have it take an action, because the downside is not the action spent. The downside is the penalty given, meaning that they have the highest
that
potential.
Gives me such a cool idea for an ability.
Yeah.
Every time it's your turn, when you would gain action points, roll on the misery table, gain a debuff. If you then successfully use this special attack thing, inflict that debuff onto whatever you hit instead.
Ooh, I like that. Now I have an idea. I have a cool idea that I think you're gonna like. What if we take the idea that you just had and make some of the skills riders? So if you have misery, you can choose one of your attacks, and that attack gains the effect of, if you use this attack, inflict your last debuff upon an enemy. What if you are on Fury? You can pick a first level ability. Using that ability costs no resource and instead gives you resource. But you have to use that first level ability. You see what I'm saying? Like, that way, regardless of what type of class you have, whether it is, a combat tailor or, a mind weaver, you have, okay, my level 1 mind weaver ability is just a daze. It's a daze that does a d4 damage, It's just a little stagger stun. But I'm a fury caster, so I need to use, I can choose one of my level 1 abilities, and I can, that is what generates my... That's what generates my thing.
I feel like I'm gonna need to make my weaving table before I can get further. So, my idea for weaving and for magic in general in this setting and this game is that magic is not as powerful as it is in, the legends or in, high fantasy settings and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's much more flexible, and because it's part of the day-to-day life of everyone who lives here, most people who are weavers are capable of using it in a myriad of ways. Hey Raiders, thank you for the shout-out.
Hello.
So, the idea is basically along the lines of mutants and masterminds, how it's got a table of here's your range, here's your area of effect, here's your damage, all these different things. And then your resource cost for the skill was going to be based on how much you spent on the different modifiers on the table.
That's very big eye, small mouth. And I don't mean that in a bad way. That's just very much how that other system works. Taking it, yeah, I like it.
So then it would just be you can do an ability off of your combat skill using Fury to generate an ability as long as its cost is X or lower. But that was going to be the idea. Thank you for the resub keys. That was gonna be the part of my idea of how to do the marshals get to have fun too, is yeah, you've got you're swinging an axe instead of casting spells. That doesn't stop you from getting to have your big ground shockwave slam attack.
Yeah, exactly. 100% agree.
You just manifest magic in a different way from other people.
Yeah. So, I like this idea.
The idea of magics with the magic CKS are predetermined spells which are treated more like a legendary item.
Ah.
So you find a magic and it's a tome that has one spell in it.
Gotcha.
And that one spell, as long as you have skill in the appropriate weaving, then you can cast that one spell. But you can only use it like once a day, kind of thing.
Okay.
So then your weaving is more along the lines of essentially being cantrips.
That is interesting. So let's say let's take off the magic part and just go martial side. Are you going to have actions that cause damage? I mean,
Yes.
Then let's say Pugilist has 5 abilities, I guess. I'm just gonna make up 5 abilities. And we're gonna throw them out in about 10 minutes. Okay? These are just 5 completely arbitrary abilities, half of which I'm going to be stealing, all of which I'm going to be stealing from other games. Let me just really quick write some stuff out. Let's say that the Pugilist has 5 abilities. Punch, but with a follow-up punch. Punch but AoE. Punch but like really hard. Punch but from over there. And punch but ignore armor. Okay? These all sound top tier, right?
Top tier.
And let's say that these are level scaled. Level 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, I guess. Why not? Whatever. Doesn't really matter. What my thought is that all those 5 abilities come from taking Pugilist, right? At different levels you gain different access to them, and you have 2 different classes that you gain access to new abilities from whenever you level up. Right? And the way that it interacts with sparks is that different sparks can put different riders on the abilities from the classes. So if you are playing Fury, your level 1 ability, Punch, but with a follow-up punch, like like an extra flurry of blows with a little bit of extra damage, whenever you do that, you gain a resource. But you have to spend the resource like normal to use the Punch but AoE, the Punch but like really hard, or the Punch but ignore armor. But you gain ability by using the base level 1. Comparatively, Calm, with the exact same set of abilities, has all of their resources at the beginning, and they can just do Punch but ignore armor 5 times in a row. But then they're going to need a nap afterwards. Joy has question mark, and then once they have their resource, they can use the resource on anything. Punch but ignore armor costs a lot more than Punch but with a follow-up. But so they have to decide how much they want to use to figure how they want to spend the resource. And then Misery says, I've got a high potential amount of resource, but if I want to use Punch but ignore armor back to back the way a Calm can, I'm going to have to start hurting myself. I'm going to have to start taking these debuffs, but I can keep on going when the Calm player is out of mana without having to.
I can punch but ignore armor just as many times, but it gives me a tummy ache.
But it gives me a tummy ache, exactly. And later on in the fight, well, Calm needs to take a quick nap and literally take a turn off of doing anything to recover a couple of points, whereas Misery is like, no, I'm just going to take another debuff and keep on going. Action economy is in Misery's favor here.
I'm just going to gain a headache now.
Yeah. Well, it's action economy, right? If Calm needs to spend a turn to recover any action points, once they run out of their initial burst, Misery has better action economy. But at the start of a fight, Calm has better potential cap because they have such a high at the beginning. How do you feel about this thought process, this concept? Punch but just unlocks twice.
I'm liking the concept at least.
Well, good, because it is just a concept, so that means you like the...
I'm not sure that I follow along the same way for riders or not. Like for how you mean on the riders, but like I am agreeing. This sounds like a good idea, and I like.
With riders, what I was thinking was with misery, you know. So misery gains one of the feats after a couple levels, I guess, or whatever. The rider of if you successfully use an attack, inflict your last debuff on the enemy, and then it says apply this to any skill between levels to any level 1 to 5 skill. So you can use that on punch but with a follow-up, or punch but with an AoE, but you can't use it on punch but from over there, or punch but ignore armor, because those are too high to apply for that bonus, to apply for that skill. So you take these extra modifiers and give them to different skills. For example, again with Fury, the rider, the modifier on punch but with a follow-up is gain resource, just straight out. It's just you level, and it can only be applied to a level 1 ability. And then we can figure out fun things, you know, whoever can figure out fun things for the other ones, like Calm might say lowers another character's action points, you know, and then on a successful attack, and then they can choose which of their attacks that applies to. But you have to be calm to get that. You have to have the calm to get that effect on your other skills, but what the skill goes on to depends on your flare. So that could be on a spell for Fireball, or it could be on a knife throw from a dagger person, or it could be on a counterattack from a shield bearer. You know, it might be on a different thing.
Yeah, it's what you are saying by riders is essentially along the lines of on hits.
Yeah, or on use in some cases for some of them.
Yeah, just like for me understanding the meaning of what you were saying.
Yeah. Rider is another term for modifier, I guess, in this sense. It rides along with the ability. I don't know where I got that phrase from. Oh. But
I did just have like the meanest timing.
Yo?
I'm sorry. I had the twinge for dum-dums, so it's probably gonna hit within like 20-ish minutes or however long.
Well, that's fine. We've been going for 2 hours, and we got some ideas. And again, this is just for getting ideas, right? This is just a brainstorm. I'm taking a look at the system and thinking, hey, here's some stuff we could do with it. Also, I had another idea. What if you can spend action points to increase to add additional D4s to any dice roll? Sort of like spending focus in War Machine.
I didn't have that, but I did have, you said action points?
I was thinking action points because then the action economy is sort of like a power attack. You know, it's a... extra damage at extra cost.
That leftover, action points could be spent for bonus deflection.
Ooh, I like that too. That's actually from Fallout. I like that. Not from Fallout, but that's Fallout. I should just say Fallout does something similar, where any unspent action points in Fallout add to your AC. Now, this is going to be different, obviously, but I'm just saying that's a game that did something similar. I like this system interaction. The flares idea is good. I do think that once we get, I do think that going ability based is a good idea though, because it gives you a lot of options, And it gives you a little bit more control, because you want to have the system be very free, but you want it to be free in a way that you can make sure the players are doing, you know... you know what I'm saying. You know.
And there was a thing too, was action, or areas of effect was different too.
Oh.
Is, instead of like making a saving throw for being in an area of effect, it's, do you have movement left?
Do you want to use it?
Do you want to get out of the area of effect? And even if it goes off before your initiative speed, you can still spend movement to get out.
Okay.
But it's any movement left over when you get out is then just eaten. So like you don't get to keep moving to get out of the alley if it's faster than you. You just barely throw yourself out of it and then end movement.
That makes sense. I like it.
I had a thingy of like some actions here.
What now?
I had some like base actions here too for like available actions for verbs.
I just had that pulled up. I think that's great. I will say, I think that with that split for flares being offensive or non-offensive, that also fixes what would otherwise be a flaw in the Spark system, because then any abilities or actions or skill checks or anything that is tied to a non-combat ability doesn't use resource. Therefore, you don't have to worry about it. But that doesn't mean that your Spark can't modify it, right? Fury could say every time that you fail at a non-combat action, your next attempt gets a stacking bonus to success, as a way of, you get angry, you get more focused, you get more brute force, you get more whatever. That you could have Spark effects that are modifiers to non-combat abilities, but that way resource stays only as a combat thing, and this kind of can just do that seamlessly. And like Calm being able to say, if you have the ability to take 5 minutes before making this check, then you gain a plus 10 modifier is great, and only available to a Calm player, to a Calm Spark player, regardless of what flare they have on hand or attempting to use. It makes the Spark define the how the players are likely to go about using their actions without locking the player into any particular action. Does that make sense? Is that a good idea?
I think so.
I think it's a cool idea.
My brain is also quickly growing very foggy.
That's okay. For anybody watching this who doesn't know, this is just a neuro thing that Sprigg has.
So my fingers are still working here.
Do you need to shimmy off then?
No, I'll keep going for now. I'm just gonna have to like not big think dogs. Another thing that was big to me was when you get to 0 HP, you're not just out of the fight. It's when you're reduced to 0, you get your action point recovery is reduced from 8 to 2.
Okay.
And
That
your
makes
speed
sense.
is reduced. And your speed is reduced, and you gain the ability to do the recover action, which is roll against your own vigor score. If you roll less than the ability score, then you get back up. You get 1 HP and you're back in the fight.
Okay. That's pretty cool. I like that. And I like the way that synergizes with the wound stuff. What was the Oh, I should look up. What was the buff for wounds?
When you're on your last remaining wound,
Mm-hmm.
action point recovery is boosted up to 12.
Right, okay.
But your deflection and evasion are decreased for every action you take.
Okay.
So if you take like 3 actions, then your deflection and evasion both get reduced by 3 for the round.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so you could, if you really want to, go glass cannon and just play with always being on your last wound, but then like, oh no, you got crit, or oh no, you got hit to 0, you're dead.
Yeah. And we could. That's also something you could play with some of the different sparks. Maybe Fury has other abilities that supplement that, or yeah, I think there's more you could do, synergize that across different components of the game. I think there's a lot of good ideas here, and the framework for a very interesting system.
Yay!
I do think that what we did here. I hope I didn't. My fear, right? My fear is that I changed something that you considered core to the system, right? I don't want to change anything that you think is against your core design philosophy. This is me trying to.
It was more like expanded on flares, cause wanted to do flares. Thought it was no sparks, yes, sparks. Wanted to do the sparks for like fueling class stuff. It's a good idea to give it actions. And I had a lot of creatures too that are like weird for ancestries. I do thing.
I follow.
I pull up on my stream here. Just gotta find it.
It's fine. Take your time.
Okay. It does not capture. Okay, I know another way to do.
What?
Easier to do. I send all of them to you, then I open in tabs.
Okay, which one are we looking at first?
1 second. Ideas? This open. Ah! No! What is this? What?
You okay?
Yeah, window capture was just like not right window.
Oh,
Was not the right size. is ideas that I had for player races.
Mm-hmm.
So classics like human, orcs, elves, stuff. I tried to go in order on tabs here.
Shark Bros.
Yeah. He's Hagen.
Street Sharks.
He's the amphibious shark.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Love it.
Puka. He's a type of fae, like rabbit goat monkey thing.
Rabbit goat monkey thing.
Mhm.
Okay. Makes sense to me.
And then Mara is deep sea mermaids. Deep sea.
Now, you were thinking about this for player races?
Yes.
Okay. How would the mermaids operate on land?
See, the fins is like it's like mudfish. The little like feety fins.
Mm-hmm.
So like they can walk on land, but not easy. They're better in water.
Makes sense.
And campaign, it's like setting them and baking like lore into the system.
Mm-hmm.
Set on the shores of Ezrian Sea is like Mediterranean area, based in roughly Iron Age.
Okay.
This imps.
Imps?
Yes. Imps. Like manifestations of negative emotions.
Right. I've seen some of these artworks before. They're very good.
And not all ideas in the folder, I'm sure, was keeping. Yeah, no, one is not keeping. Halflings though, loved this idea of halflings.
Same. I really enjoy this halfling concept. After
So
5 years of living...
halflings-
Go ahead.
Halflings' idea are descendants of changelings. Changelings, shape changers cursed by sins of parents. So changelings never have a face of their own. Halflings born from changelings.
Yes.
And just over time mimic people they're close to.
Become more like them. Less mimic and more adaptation, I guess.
Yes.
They're not trying to deceive, they're just becoming like them, sort of like, gaining an accent over time. I love that idea. I think it's fantastic. And it creates a lot of really interesting roleplay opportunities,
Is another one not fully sure that using it is lizard people. Not opposed. Not that I don't want. Like a bunch of intro races. Just like once I start, there's a lot of lore to keep building more to like not leave anyone out.
I would encourage bipedal races, just because that's the kind that the average player is most likely to feel a connection to, right? As much as I love the mermaids, all you have to do is look at the metrics for how many players will play a lizard man versus how many players will play a naga, right? It becomes readily apparent that players are much less likely to feel comfortable or to feel a connection with, or to feel natural playing as a race like the puka that's a quadruped, or a race like this mermaid that has bottom paths. Whereas something like the street sharks, the shark, characters, or the halflings, because the halfling also flags a very natural thing of, well, yeah, we are people around us. I am masking, right? When I'm around people, I mask so that I act more like them. What if over time that changed physical appearance as well? I think that's beautiful. I think that's awesome. I think that flags something in the human psyche that says, yes, I identify with this. That's going to be a lot harder to find with something like the imps that have four legs. So
also have still humans, orcs, elves, trolls,
okay.
changelings, tieflings, giants.
Yes.
Minotaurs, dwarves, halfling, goblin.
Okay.
But trying making more slightly harder stuff too.
Like the dragon tiefling that you linked as well. Drake.
Is Drake.
I meant the next one.
Dragonoot.
Dragonoot?
Idea for Dragonoot. Dragons in setting dragon blood, very magic, very, very powerful, very, mutating. Heroes of legend, Siegfried. Bathe in blood of the dragon, become invincible warrior. Dragonoot is descendant of Siegfried. Kind of thing.
Like old Dragonborn. I like.
Grab people.
How much do you want to tie to race?
Fairly little.
Okay. Because that's a difficult question to answer, right? In some situations, playing a certain race might give you certain abilities. In other situations, you might want to just be, this is how I look, and this is what's in the world.
Is, a couple little innate abilities, plus HP per wound.
Okay. Oh, HP per wound. Oh, okay.
So
that functions as a hit die.
Sliding scale balance for powerful abilities. Less powerful abilities means big wounds.
And so in my chat mentioned that if that's the kind of scaling that you're going to be doing, then you could have templates for how to make your own races, because you're not tying, like, a billion stats and feats to a race. Therefore, the race can just be whatever player wants.
It's like seeing, these people, intros. Instead of figure out every single one for lore-wise, make sure everyone included, make system rules to make all of them, and just give them examples how to fit in cultures, because racial culture is not really a thing. All regional cultures, how I'm trying to build.
Yes. I think that makes sense.
And not really in book right now, but trying to write monsters and stuff for setting as legendary settings. So like no owlbears, not like owlbears ruining honey crop. The owlbear raiding honey bee farms across coast.
Okay, that's very much more how actual myths are. Like, Pegasus is not a type of creature, it is a specific creature that is named Pegasus.
Still, high fantasy still have, like, other creatures, but, like, owlbears, minion, the owlbear, monster.
Coyotes, minion, the coyote, god.
Example, talked with Riddle before, the fire giant. Was champion of his people and, like, tried to rule all giants. Curse placed on cursed his enemies with every breath, and now immortal, chained beneath the mountain. So one big mountain is a big volcano. The lava of the volcano is fire giant.
So the lava itself is the fire giant?
It comes from.
Okay.
So, like, every monster, fighting every monster, so can be, like, main big bad, main monster of campaign. At least for, like, 5-level arc kind of thing. Not just fight monster, kill monster, they win. Go to tavern, like, track monster, learn about monster, face monster, lose, run away, learn more, follow monster, set trap, face monster, defeat monster.
Did you look up Monster Care Squad? Did I ever show that to you?
You talked with me, wanted to learn more, haven't found for reading.
Okay. Alright. I will have to talk more about you with that, because that is a game system that is very much based on this idea of learning puzzle solving, how to work with healing a monster. So information gathering and research and, well, learning about the world and the creatures and how they live is a core in-game part of the phases of play, of the way the game is played. So there might be some idea in there. It's not go fire giant, it's go find out what the fire giant is doing wrong. Go find out where it is. Go find out what things around around the mountains are from the fire giant and which aren't. Is that sort of what you're talking about? The research phase. Encouraging a research phase is something that I really do like, and something that I've been trying to do in my game. In what I'm going to be continuing to try to do in my game, I should say. But it's not necessarily something that's easy. It's a lot of combat players will want to just run to combat, and well, maybe we shouldn't let them. How are you holding up? How are you feeling?
Spinny.
Do you need to lay down?
Still 2.5 hours of stream, though.
Health is important. Do you want to pivot to do something else?
Okay. I do
Okay.
that.
I am going to call my stream here. I hope this has been interesting and /or informative. Be sure to like the video if you had a good time. Dislike it if you had a bad time. Fair is fair. I accept my fate. And I'll look forward to seeing you again real soon.
Brain did sing in the middle of
And that's okay.
RPG time. Been excited a long time now.
Yeah, we'll do this again. I'm certain of it. You are a delight, and thanks to everybody in chat for coming out. And hope you have a wonderful evening, friends. Cheers.